we're going to finish up with the topic that we were continuing from before spring break in Chapter 7 called Intranets and Extranets. We previously talked about intranets and in general how it's a network of networks, and now we're going to move on to talking about intranets. Think about your intramural sports that you did when you were in high school and even here at the university. Internal to the organization. So an intranet. We have a network inside of the organization. So people inside of that organization are going to share information using the network technology because of our ability to use the TCP/IP protocols. We're able to extend that and use that in these environments to create these intranets, also known as corporate portals. Okay, so in these kind of networks, we're going to collect, store, disseminate information internal to the organization. Employees will tend to use this for their tasks and roles on a daily basis. You might see somebody here at the university using Vandal Web to access their payroll information or access their tax information. You may also see them accessing it to look at benefits. So that's an internal purpose for employees that we might see. We might also see some business partners interacting, such as the insurance agencies and the health insurance components. They become able to add information on those intranets for those employees so that they can have that information. This is different than a local area network. We're creating this environment of this interaction occurring, and it is behind a firewall. So we have security set up so that we don't have to worry about other people getting access to this information. So it's behind the firewall. It limits the access to somebody who has the right authorization to get into it. So here we can see from this graphic, we see all the different type of people who might be interacting, and we can see down below here all these different type of databases where we might be having information and that we might collect and store and then disseminate back to others. So this is the database side of it. We're using that intranet, that network aspect internal to the company. So when we look at the table that was provided, it compares the differences between intranet and intranet. And the first big difference is that between the type of user. So intranet, anybody can use it. Intranet, only those who have the authorization. So we see our geographical scope being differential there, being more limited because it's only for those people inside of the company. The speed is going to be much faster because they're not going out onto the general internet, getting the access to this information. And if you remember, I showed you a infrastructure map from the U of I and I said we'll come back to this concept. We see these connections out to these other, I said there was the intranet, we were going a connection to WSU, and we were seeing these different components there. So these are where we start building these things, so we're not always going out on the internet, so we can increase the speed side of it. And then we see the security because it's accessed behind a firewall and not everybody has access to it. So an intranet, internal to the company. The next one is an extranet, external to the company, but still having a network that's secured using the web and internet technologies. And we can see the typical way we see an extranet is suppliers who are interacting with our companies. So we may see a supplier notifying us of a shortage of raw materials, and they're going to be not able to provide the final product in the time frame that they had originally set. This allows the companies to do communication much easier using these web technologies. And we talk about interorganizational systems, IOSs. So internal to the organization, we're going to see stuff like electronic funds transfer and electronic data interchange being used. So that's how the payment process goes through, is by transferring funds electronically. You purchase this product, all of these products from this supplier, and you do a payment using the electronic fund transfer. We see a variety of different applications. We see order entry processing. Instead of filling out forms and physically handing those forms in, this is done all electronically. We see Federal Express and how they've used that with their tracking systems. In general, using some sort of internet networking aspects help to reduce costs, partly because we have an increase in communication, can lead to competitive advantages. And we do have to think about the security side of it, because that leaves us open to somebody getting access to this information. And if you remember when we were talking about security and we talked about Target who had a hack, they were hacked through their supplier, through their HVAC system supplier, and that's how the hackers were able to get into the Target information. So it is something we have to think about here. A variety of advantages we can see. We can certainly coordinate much easier between the different suppliers and the company. We can get feedback from them on if there's defective products or defective raw materials that have to be replaced. We can let them know how satisfied the customers are. It helps to reduce the cost by utilizing the technology from a speed component, and then just easier to communicate. So this is the comparison between the internet, the intranet, and the extranet. So you want to understand the differences. As I did the one looking at the internet and intranet, now we're adding on the extranet piece of it. And we see those users broader than what we saw on the intranet, but not as broad as the internet.